cans. It was orange and had a little pad on top of the juice cans. You'd sit on that. Remember that too?
What kind of juice can?
Like grape juice cans, you know,
Yeah,
the tall ones.
Pineapple.
Pineapple
juice
juice cans. Yeah, actually pineapple's the only thing they still have in the cans.
Tomato.
Tomato,
Tomato
apple
too.
juice too sometimes.
And we don't buy those.
It's fun.
Okay, Rendell.
Okay. Okay, this is a Stuart and I story. Stuart and I, when we were teenagers, when he was 16 and I was about 14, we were going to have a great adventure one Saturday morning. So we were going to fish Pine Creek Reservoir. So we packed our lunch, we got our fishing poles and drove up the mountain and drove as far up the road we could. Pine Creek, you needed a four-wheel drive to get into. So we had to park our truck and hike up the road. We hiked up the road, we fished there for a while. And there was a guy out in the middle of the lake who was in one of those inner tubes floating around fishing. And he caught a fish and we watched him, but instead of reeling it in, it towed him around the lake. We watched him go around. Finally, he got it in, and we weren't catching anything, so we hiked up to another beaver pond up above the lake. And Stuart asked me what time it was, and neither of us had worn a watch, so we looked up at the sun and said, yes, it's at least noon. We're hungry, so we ate our lunch, and then we hiked up to a third beaver pond and fished it for a while. And then we said, you know, it's getting pretty late. We better be heading for home. So we hiked back down, got in our truck, drove back down to the house, walked in the door, and it was 12:30.
No.
It was lunchtime.
So you had lunch again.
We did.
Not real patient fishermen, huh?
Nope, and the drive must have been a lot shorter than we thought it was going to be. We must have been fast hikers, though.
Yeah.
No kidding. 3 beaver ponds later.
So we figured we ate lunch probably about 9:30 or 10.
Did your bait even get wet?
We were using flies.
That's all right.
I don't know that we did.
They're
a lot.
dry flies.
Yeah, they were dry flies.
Good to have brothers.
All right, I think we're to Lori.
Okay. Well, I wrote several down, but the one I wanted to share, Joan shared the thing about getting ice cream cone with Dad, and it was always a pleasure for me to go with Dad. But I hated working with cows. Gabe was exactly opposite to me. I would find anything I could do to not be there on Sunday. I didn't really like Saturday. I didn't really like
Sundays were fun too.
Sundays were better than Saturdays. I didn't really like young women's sports, except they played them on Saturday, and so I would always go, because then you didn't have to stay on the ranch. But what I wanted to share about Dad was I remember before I went to school, so I must have been 4 or maybe 5, driving the pickup truck, steering for him, feeding the cows. And I'm in the front steering in first gear, and he's in the back, dumping hay off the back. And I was just sure I was going to go into the creek. Dad, the creek's getting close. No, we're fine. Just keep driving. Dad, it's getting closer. But anyway, we didn't go into the creek, of course, because he knew when to stop. But it was fun. It was a fun memory as a young child, having that much faith that Dad knew what was going on, and even before I went to school to be able to drive.
How old were you?
I said 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
It was before I went to school, and I didn't do kindergarten, so it was probably 5. Just steering, though. He already put it in gear, but I'd stand on the seat and steer. And I didn't ever dump him off.
You're better than Dean.
John Lori, the rest of us all dumped him off.
No wonder I got that job.
We started doing a little bit of hay up there. Dad cut that hill.
Can you
on
even
the,
see him?
What would that be? The
He turned the light on.
north side? No, it'd be the south side. The south side, he had cut that little bit of hay, and so he had baled it and stuff. And at that point, he was getting older, and so he drove the truck, and I was stacking the hay because I was a teenager. And he tipped me off the top of the truck.
Oh, no way.
You fell off?
I went all the way off. Yep.
Oh, man.
I had to
That's
jump.
been quite
I had
the
to
same
jump
since.
off, but
Is that when you were
it
getting
was-
ornery?
that way we know that Dad did the same thing on occasion.
No, I don't ever remember him actually going off the truck. He yelled at us a couple times, but Couple?
Maybe I wasn't as agile
Every
as he
time
was.
we went.
Because I had to jump.
I'd go over a border and kill a truck, and then he'd be mad at me.
man,
The thing would sit there and spew water out of the radiator, and we had to go get the pickup to pull it and start it. Oh, he yelled at us all the time. Seems like. But
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
remember when he fell out of the barn? We were out there loading.
Oh, I do remember that.
Remember that? We were out there loading the barn, and he thought I was underneath there, and so he tried to stop the bale from falling, so I could, and it pulled him on out, and he landed pretty much on his head, and it's a lot of hay down there, but not really
Hit
that
pretty
much.
hard.
And
I still can't
I
believe
come up and said, "Are you
break
hurt?"
his
And he says, "Well, of course I'm hurt.
neck.
Go tell Mom I fell out of the barn."
I didn't know that he.
And she told him to go to the doctor, and he got in the car and left, and he was gone for 2 hours, but he didn't ever make it to the doctor.
Did he go have fish?
No, he went down. He went down and had Frosty.
He probably went and got some ice cream.
Yeah, that's right.
Certainly didn't make it better.
That was pre-fish days.
I wanna hear the whole story though about the barn.
Well, we better come back to that.
Okay,
Who's doing it?
it's somebody else's turn.
Yeah.
Marlon's,
It's Marlo's turn.
Marlon's.
That's why you have the camera.
Oh, sweetheart.
I remember when we started building the barn.
The one I was going to tell was about my mother. I used to have a paper route when I was probably 13, 14 years old. I'd worked ever since then, summer times when I wasn't in school. And but I remember on this paper route, in Idaho, we'd have these really bad snowstorms. These were blizzards. And I remember one Sunday morning I had to go, and she didn't want me to just, it was probably a mile before I even got to my route, so she didn't want me to have to do that by myself early Sunday morning. And so she'd bring the car along, and so it was like a way station from where I could do the papers. And I remember this this one morning I had, my dad had this silk scarf that he'd bought when he was in World War II and over in Europe somewhere. And it was so cold that they had me wrapped up in the scarf and everything else, and I was out there delivering papers. And the wind was so strong that I came home when we got all done, and she brought me home again. That had been ripped off my neck, and I didn't even know it. And I'd always felt bad that I'd lost Dad's silk scarf. So later on, when I had some more money, I bought him a new silk scarf for Christmas and told him the story, and he didn't even remember anymore, which was good. I remember my mom always being very supportive of me in that way, always trying to find ways to help me. And even though paper route is a fairly individual thing, then she still find ways to help me with that.
Well, I'm not as good as the rest of you. I've been thinking about this for, well, ever since Laura gave me the assignment, and I have a real hard time coming up with just one experience, I guess, that I can pin on and tell you about. But I guess thinking back into my childhood, I've kind of been a student at the Nichols University. And from a very small young man running into the house after having had a nightmare and having Mom pick me up and hold me in her arms and comfort me and tell me I was okay and teach me that it's natural to have emotions and to feel them and to feel the love that she had to share with me whenever I needed it. Learned a lot of things from Dad. Learned how to work with cows and drive hay trucks into the ditch and kill them on the borders like you all had experiences doing too, and marking calves. Glad I don't have to do those things anymore. But if I had to, I probably could, thanks to him. I have good memories of Dad showing kindness to Mom. I remember them dancing to an old LP in our front room, and I remember him always buying her a corsage when he'd take her to the green and gold ball. I don't know if he was spurned by her wrath if he didn't, but he always seemed to do that, and that left a mark in my mind on how to treat women. I think we've all had a lot of experiences as we've learned from Grandpa and Grandma. Each one of us have kind of been a student at the Nichols University, and in a lot of ways I feel like I'm still a graduate student. I'm not not done our school days in the formal school education, we have our favorite professors, and I guess I had my favorites too. I have a lot of love and respect for the ones that taught me the most, and I really value the education that I am receiving even to this day. The things that I consider myself to be and the talents that I have, I figure came from my teachers. And whether it's from how I treat others, how I get along with my spouse, how I get along with my siblings, all of those things came from my parents. And I think in many ways all of us have had that same kind of exposure. And I got this shirt kind of as a memento, and it's got 3 words here, and it says intellectus and sapientia and scientia, and I'm sure one of them loosely translated must mean horty. I looked and looked trying to figure out what they meant. The other one I think is larapin.
Very loosely.
Loosely translated. And I don't know what the other one is. It may be some translation for horse
Good night.
chewing, horse ear chewing or something. But really learned a lot, and I have a lot of good memories. I just can't pin one down that would express my feelings for my parents. And today, as we celebrate their, how many years, Grandma? Let's see, 1949?
49, so it is 56.
56 years. As we celebrate that union and all the great things that have come from the love that you two shared, I am thankful. And the more I get to know people of the world, the more I'm grateful for good parents and for all of the teachings that have helped me to be the rat that I am.
The good son that you are. Good husband you are. Good father.
I owe a lot to them, and I've been very blessed to have the heritage that I have. Next.
No problem. My mom worked, and so she was often gone, and the times that I spent with her were usually fixing dinner or cleaning or doing chores with her. But there was one time I remember where she'd help me do this big science fair project, and of course I couldn't go with me to school on the bus because it was so big, how they stand up 3 feet and whatever. So she took me to school one morning, and we stopped at Bagel Nosh, which is a little bagel store. And we went in there and we just had a bagel, and she just, she was just there, and we just talked. And I just remember how much that meant to me, just to, I guess, having so many kids and having her so busy. She just spent that time, and I try to do that with my girls, because you never know, what they're going to remember. And you want to make a lot of opportunities for those good memories. So I was glad for that. But the thing I wanted to share kind of has to do with what you said, which is interesting. But my dad loved my mom, and he called her his beloved, because she's B. He would come home from work, and he would just go right to her and just kiss her, and almost, in my mind, I just see him, like doing this romantic dip to her head. He probably did, because he loved her so much, and he just wanted to be with her. But he worked downtown Salt Lake, and so he was right across from ZCMI. So a couple times a year he would go into ZCMI, and on their sale rack, dresses, and he would choose about 5 or 6 dresses that he thought Mom might like, and he'd bring them all home, and he would say, okay, it's time for the fashion show. And so he would make her come out and model each of these dresses for him, with having in mind that she might like one of them.
Hold on.
Good job. Go, Lori.
Yes.
Now say it again. Tape 2. Okay.
And she's only supposed to like one or two of the dresses. But she always liked 4 or 5 of them. And he wasn't thinking she would like that many, because he returned the other ones she didn't like to the store. So anyway, over the years, did you want to finish?
No.
Over the years, he bought fewer and fewer dresses for her because he had great taste, and she usually liked what he bought her, so she would keep them all. And I appreciated that he loved her and he took care of her. I remember watching his excitement in giving to her. And it was great to watch that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
I like the first person better.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Well, it's been interesting listening to all the stories. Some of them focusing on Dad and some of them focusing on Mom and stuff. And I liked Steve's comment about his mother, because I used to come home and we'd usually have to walk from the bus, or sometimes it'd bring us all the way up, but we'd walk in and the smell of fresh bread just coming out of the oven, you know, and Mom would usually tear it open because she didn't cut it, but she would tear open fresh bread, and sometimes it was homemade butter that she had made probably, and honey or something like that, or homemade jam, and we always had wonderful things to eat. And the interesting thing that I thought about my parents is that Dad expected so much from us, and you know, like Lori said, he'd just put you in the seat and say drive, or he'd say, okay, get on this horse, like Gay was saying, and ride. As a child, that was somewhat overwhelming, at least for me. And I remember times when I would cry, and he'd say, stop your crying, and I would want to stop crying so bad, because I knew it made him angry, that it just made me more upset, and I would, you know, I couldn't stop crying. I mean, it wasn't physically possible. And Mom would come and comfort me and comfort him and be the go-between for all of us. And it's been interesting been interesting that she said that I was kind of the go-between in later years between her and Dad. And I did write up something that I wanted to share, and this is a rough draft, and I don't remember it real well, so Lance will have to help me out maybe with the final copy. But I'm going to switch seats and read this to you and see what you think.
Need some glasses too?
Don't forget to breathe. No, glasses are
Very important, Daniel.
Lena peered out of the window and squinted at the bright sunshine. It was a beautiful summer day, the 15th of June, in fact, and all around the farming community of Sutter County was green and fresh. Lena wasn't thinking about her farm or the beauty of the community. Her brow was furrowed as she thought of her neighbors to the east, the Nichols family. She frowned again. Imagine another child being born into that already overcrowded second-hand farmhouse. How many children would that have made anyway? She thought. There was Dean, the oldest, then Kurt, and then the 4 girls, Sue, Gay, Joan, and Lori, and then Lance, and now another. That would make 8. As if these Nichols could afford to feed any more children. She was amazed that they made ends meet now, with Lloyd working at the pottery in Lincoln, and Nona home on the ranch with the kids. That ranch of 200 acres seemed to be growing more children than cows or sheep. Well, she thought with disgust, she had to try to tell Nona what's best. Yeah, Lena thought, God is sending these spirits to a good home, but how will they be able to care for and send them to college, or send them anywhere for that matter? She was still stewing on the matter as she came into the driveway of the Nichols house. She had to check on them. Heavens knows they needed looking after, she thought. Confirmation of this notion came quicker than even Lena expected when Lance came around the corner of the house. His gait changed from a walk to a definite strut when he saw her. His face also shone with pride and satisfaction. I painted my car, he exclaimed. The painting was evident from the green splatters almost everywhere, most of all on the boy himself.
And my undies, too.
See, that's why I got to talk to you and get more.
Hey, I had to wear those undies, even after they were green. And the bottom of my shoes were green.
Everything was green.
Lena assessed the situation quite quickly from the many clues about. The child had found several large chicken feathers and a can of green paint, and the metal toy pedal car now had more or less a fresh coat. Very nice, she muttered, thinking more of the mess than his proud accomplishment. She was only distracted for a moment and then proceeded to probe him for the reason she had come down to visit in the first place. Did your mother have that baby yet? She questioned. Oh yeah, Lance responded. We got a little boy, he said with disappointment in his voice. What's wrong with that? She asked. Oh, nothing. But I'm not sharing my toys with him.
He said that.
Lena smiled, maybe for the first time that morning.
First time that month.
This kid sure has spunk, she thought. So what's his name? She asked. Vole, the boy said. Lena paused. Lance spoke very well for a child of just 3, but she had never heard the name Vole. Vole, she asked? It's not Vole, he said. Vole. Vole, she repeated. Now the boy was full of spunk and frustration too. This dense old lady would never understand. Not Vole, he said again. Vole.
I don't think you need to change anything.
I think you should change the names to protect the innocent.
You're the innocent.
Oh.
How do you spell that?
Okay, we'll get to some serious parts so you can relax a little bit.
Get back over there.
Ramesses, get back over there.
I couldn't say it the right way, but that didn't give anybody else the excuse not to say it right.
Especially her.
Clarification was given to a whole audience several weeks later in the Lincoln Ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Nona sat with 7 of her 8 children and reminded them to be reverent. Although she had just given birth 2 weeks before, she knew her family should be in church and she would be an example to them, as she always was. Lloyd stood at the front of the chapel together with fellow members of the priesthood. There was no need for a microphone. His voice rang with pride and authority. And the name by which he shall be known on the records of the church and throughout his life here on earth shall be Burl Grady Nichols. Along with this name came a blessing and a heritage. The young boy was to receive all that his father had. In the eyes of a tired old neighbor, that inheritance was to be a meager sum. From an eternal perspective, however, the blessings were more than man could understand, for the gifts of his For the gifts of his Father in heaven were beyond measure.
Nice job.
Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, hopefully I got most of
I
the
like my
facts right.
pronunciation better. Got more laughs.
Yeah, at least you didn't change your name.
If only I could have pronounced Brady, I probably would have done something else too.
Anyway, it's
He was a teacher in Lloyd's.
it was difficult for me on my mission to write in a journal, and I really struggled by saying, you know, today I did this, today I did that, and several years ago I started trying to write in a third-person party like that, to do my life story, and hopefully stories like this will motivate me because, you know, I do have a rich heritage, and thanks, Mom, for everything.
You have a great talent for all that.
Yeah, great.
Really good.
You're right.
Very good.
Next time, pick on somebody else.
Expecting some change.
I was beginning to wonder if it was about Lance or about Burl.
Well, I'm glad he didn't bring my name into it, because I helped him and I was older.
I was gonna
should've known
say,
better,
I
that
had
green
some
paint.
accomplices
Oh,
with that green paint thing. It wasn't
Glad
just
you didn't
me.
try and paint the back room.
I don't remember painting though, I must not have been involved. You weren't, only,
No, it
I
was
think only
Joan and
Lance.
Lori and I thought.
I don't remember even Lori helping,
No?
but I
How
remember
did
you
I
and
talk you
me.
into it?
Yeah, nobody could ever talk Joan into doing something.
Well, I thought it was a good idea.
It was just an old rusty bicycle.
It did, it needed help, but
Well, somebody
Oh.
had welded it together. It wasn't a real bicycle. It had kind of 4 wheels on it, and they didn't any of them, I think, the same size. They were all different size tires, and it had
Only
been
two of
welded.
them were
And
the same, weren't there? I thought 2 of them.
two of them were
I
the
don't
same.
know, but it
The
was
back two were the
ski-wampus.
same was the front two, only the steering wasn't real true, so when it
It
turned.
wasn't true this way, and it wasn't true this way either.
Sorry, Dean and I built it.
Well, that explains it.
That's as good a job as welding as you did painting.
What did you rebuild?
It was a little go-kart.
I remember
It didn't
welding it
have
together.
pedals.
No, it was two
It was a
tricycles.
metal car.
It didn't have pedals
It was
on
two
We're talking about
tricycles.
two different things.
We're talking about 2 different things. The car was different than what you're talking about now.
Car?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Little car that you painted.
Oh,
That was-
We
pedal
didn't
That
paint
car.
like
was a
my little
pedal
car.
car.
It was a bicycle.
It was two
Tricycle.
tricycles.
Painted the little green-
The front
It was
tires
a
had
car,
gone
yeah,
out,
we
and we
did
tore it
both.
You did
apart,
both of them.
and we
You
turned
painted
one
the little
upside
green car,
down,
too.
My
and made the
pedal
front,
car?
and we
Yes.
put it, welded it back together.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
We
It
were
was all
about
rusty.
16,
It was all
17,
rusty and the paint was all coming
I
off.
didn't remember
About the same
that.
time
I
we
just remember
welded
painting that
the-
weird bicycle, that 4-wheel, whatever it was.
No, the little car you painted
I don't-
first, and then the bicycle, or the bicycle and then the little car.
I
I
don't
don't know.
remember
Shame
painting
on
the
me, no
little, I
wonder
don't
I got
remember
it.
painting the little car. I only remember painting that
That weird
four-wheeled,
thing.
Working.
welded together unit that Dad made.
And it had handlebars,
So it just
but
shows
they had
there's
been
some
welded
selective
together, too.
memory
They
going
weren't
on
real
here.
handlebars.
We couldn't put, it wouldn't fit together, cause we just turned the bicycles kinda upside down,
Yeah.
and then, oh, this'll kinda work here, so weld it.
It was quite a car. I don't think it had any air tires on it
Oh, no,
either.
they were just
just
old
steel
bicycles.
rims.
And that's why we got
I
them,
don't
because
think
the
we
front
painted it
tires
that
had been
time.
broke out,
Yeah.
I
and
don't
so
think
we
it was
just
the
had these
same
junk
time. I think we
tricycles.
It
painted the
was,
little,
it was something.
It was-
originally was
I
Lance.
think Jay helped
And I
us
think
do
it was
it,
later
or
we did it
something
inside.
like that.
I don't remember.
It was
that.
quite a
I
piece.
remember building
Yeah,
it.
you could hardly tell the red.
I have another one for Heather, but I kind of want to hear the mom stories now. We could save these others for another night.
Yeah, but mine won't be near as good as yours.
Well, so I thought about this. I have so many experiences with my dad that were special to me. But I had one with my mother that really stands out in my mind so much. Because after my dad passed away, it seemed like Mother and I just grew further and further apart, because it seemed like everything I wanted to do, she wouldn't let me. And I wanted to stay in Bergen and go to school, and she wouldn't let me. And anyway, After we had lived in Burden for, and I don't remember it, but it was after the flood and an M.N. and Gleaner thing, and had gone in and gone to bed. And Zelda came in later to get the car, because we had borrowed she and Clarence's car, and they'd come in there to pick up the car. And as she came into the bedroom where Janet and I slept, I knew Janet was asleep. She went to sleep early, but I was laying there and I thought, boy, they're not going to know I'm awake. And just kind of grumbling under my beard another time. But Zelda, they both thought we were asleep, and Zelda turned to Mother and said, well, Mom, how is Nona doing? And Mother said, you know, I really think she's going to make it. She says, it sure has been a struggle for her, though. And I just got to feeling more and more ashamed as she went on, and finally she said, you know, your dad told me to take special care of her because she would need more because she would miss him more. And she says, I really have tried, but she surely has made it hard for me to do it. And after that, I really tried to be a better girl, because I could see that her heartache was about as deep as mine. And so from then on, I tried to be a better daughter.
Is that true, Aunt Teresa?
Wasn't I better? Wasn't I a little better?
Hurry, say yeah.
She's taking the fifth.
Of course.
You get an extra scoop
Nona
of ice
and I
cream.
were kindred spirits.
We just want to make sure she's not rewriting history like Aunt Janet does. Do you have one to share with us?
Are you going to tell one?
My childhood was like Rich's, except I never went to the hospital.
You're always in trouble.
You must have got along with Aunt Janet pretty well.
Well, it wasn't just Janet. Zelda was
older.
She was sandwiched between the two. Lucky you made it out at all.
If I had come along, she never would have made it.
That's just right.
Tressa was my ideal from the time I was just a little girl, I tell you.
Well,
Anyway,
when my dad got sick, my mother's half-brothers asked that they said they could cure him, and they'd take him to California and give him treatments. They were both chiropractors. And then after Dad passed away, it was decided that Nona and I would go to California and work for Paul and Ami to pay for all they had done for Dad. And Nona was to be a nanny at Ami's, and I was to be secretary at Paul's place of business. And we had quite an experience in California. But we were always kindred spirits, and we made it. We paid off the debt for our dad.
we did. How long did it take? 9 months.
Longer
The school year, I was there almost 10 months, I guess, but I went there and went my
How old
junior.
were you? Oh, junior.
Junior.
Did it make you bitter or anything?
Yes, it did. I'm sorry.
No, I would, that would be a
I
hard
would say
one.
you
It was
killed
hard.
him. I would not want to work for you.
Wait a minute.
They said they could cure
No,
him. and
they
didn't.
tried. They tried.
They tried.
They thought, they did what they thought they should.
I wasn't bitter towards them, and I wasn't bitter that I had to go, that I was asked to do that. I don't know.
You didn't live in the same house that?
No.
Just off and on. Sometimes I could
Oh,
go over and
how hard
spend
that would
time
be.
with Norma.
Go from a high school of 100 in the whole school to 2,000 in your grade. John Marshall High.
That would have been
And
really
that was your
tough.
junior year?
That was my junior year.
Oh, And were you out of high school, Tressa?
Yes.
Yes, I was home from my mission.
You were,
She'd
you
gone
were
on
just
a
a
mission.
full-time
So
secretary
it was,
Mhm.
then?
Where did you serve your
And you
mission?
didn't get any money from it.
Oh, no, we were paying for what
We
they
finally
did.
got a pair of
Tiny
shoes
little
on.
thing they did. and
They each
had
got a
me
pair
as
of shoes, they
secretary.
said.
Yeehaw.
No, I did.
Oh, Mom did, only one pair of shoes.
I was putting a jar lid in the bottom of one of my shoes just before I went to school one morning, and that littlest girl, Sandra came in and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to cover up the hole in my shoe." And she says, "Well, why don't you go get a new pair?" And I said, "Because I don't have any money." And she says, "Well, go tell my dad." And I said, "No, he isn't responsible for my shoes." But some way, the word got to them some way, and so they went to Tressa and asked her to buy me a pair of shoes. And I don't know where the money came from, but I did get a new pair of shoes.
Where'd the money?
It came from them.
Oh, very good.
I wasn't being paid either.
Yeah.
Somebody bought me a pair of shoes.
How long was your dad living with them?
Let's see, he left in October and came home for Christmas. Now, what day in October, I don't remember, but it was after we'd taken all the crops in, and he then felt like he could leave.
So 2
So
months?
2 months maybe, huh?
I doubt it
Maybe
was a
3?
full 2 months. Do you remember?
I was
Tracy?
in California.
You were,
I was in
the mission
back
field.
east in the mission
Yeah.
field, so I didn't know much about what was going on.
They didn't even tell her until they knew he couldn't live any longer, and then
His sister had to write and tell me Mother wouldn't. She
didn't
said
want
it
her to
would
come home.
interfere with my missionary efforts, and she wouldn't tell me that Dad was sick. And his oldest sister wrote to me, and she said, "I think you should know." And so
Boy, that was
then finally the bishop sent for me to come home, and I was there 2 weeks before he died. And I left and went back to Mission Field the next day after the services.
Where did you return to? Where was your mission?
It was northern states. The headquarters were in Chicago, and I worked in Michigan and Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I didn't know you served a mission.
Why did they solicit Grandpa to go there and get treatment, or he didn't?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And 3 years ago that he went back with me, and Sue and Steve took her all around her stomping grounds up there.
I
And
was with you.
yeah, Betty was with us too.
Oh, fun.
We had quite a fun experience that year.
That was Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It surely was. That was special.
Betty, would you share something with us as well?
Yeah.
You, none of you know my parents, but
We
I'll
don't?
tell you a couple.
We'll get to know them
We know
better
your
now.
kids. You can tell something about one of your kids.
My dad was a fun-loving man, and he teased a lot, and so my siblings inherited that character. So did my kids.
Oh, that.
Not you, though?
And no, I don't think I cheese, but I can remember when I was about 5 years old, he was in a play at the church, and he was dressed up as a woman. And that's all I can remember. It was he left the house dressed up as a woman, and I asked my mom where he was going, and she says he's going to play, and we'll go see him. And that's all I remember about it. But he'd do anything like that.
Oh, fun.
My mom was a very patient person, except I can remember one time when she lost her patience, and it was because of the teasing part that my siblings did. And it was my brother just younger than me, and he just teased me all one day and just about drove me nuts. And she finally was so mad at him, she was putting wood in the wood stove, and she had the stove lifter in her hand. She just out and smacked him like that and broke his arm. Oh no! And then he felt so bad.
The vengeance are coming at last.
But I was tickled, because then I knew he was hurting and he wouldn't bother me.
And was it so? Didn't he ever tease you again?
Oh, heavens no. They all teased me.
Were you the baby?
No, I was the oldest. There was me, and then there was 5 bullies. and then I got a sister and then another brother. So, and all those boys teased just like
Your dad.
like my dad and my kids.
Uh-oh.
See,